Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to the landing. Today's spotlight on oral history is a spotlight on Mr. Bill Edwards. He was interviewed as part of the Raising the Story of Menhaden fishing project undertaken in 2009-2010 in Beaufort and Harkers Island. Mr. Edwards worked as shore engineer for Standard Products. In this interview, he discusses the conversion of World War II Navy boats into Menhaden boats, the strike of 1951, spider planes and pilots, and much more. Please sit back and enjoy this wonderful interview with Mr. Bill Edwards.
Okay, I'm Barbara Garrity-Blake, and it's January 5th, 2010, my first interview of the new year, and I'm here in Beaufort on Highway 101 at Mr. Bill Edwards' house. So, Mr. Edwards, can we start off by you telling me where you were born and where you grew up?
Born in at Lillian, Virginia. That's between Fairport and Reedville. Mm-hmm. There was a post office there for many years and a store. It's all gone now. At August 13th, 1934.
Okay, so when you were coming up, how many factories were around?
7.
7 in Reedville area?
In Reedville. 52 boats, if I remember right, worked out of there. You need to know the names of the plants. Have you had?
Well, you can give them to us.
Okay, on the end of the point as you came in, the Cockles Creek was McNeil Company, formerly Palmer Industries, I think was the name of it. McNeil Dotson was the next one up, McNeil Edwards, and then Menhaden Company, which was Mr. Howard Jett, and then Edwards Company. And across the creek was Morrison Fisher, and then Reedville Oil and Guana. They were all operational when I was growing up as a kid. All the boats were steamboats in the 30s.
Those wooden steamboats?
Wooden steamboats. All had steam power. All had steam whistles, and they were distinctive. Every boat had a different sound. If the people in the area could identify the boat by the sound of the whistle.
Was that intentional that they did the whistles?
No. It happened that way. There was one boat named the BHB Hubbard, and she had the loudest and the shrillest whistle. You could hear it as much as 10 and 12 miles inland. It was awesome. All the others had steam whistles of a type. But by 1938 or 40, some of them changed over to diesel. Then they got the air horn. The G.H. McNeil, around 1938, was converted to diesel power, Fairbanks Morse. And it sounded awful funny when she came in the creek and blew the air horn because it was highly unusual. Anyway, that was back in the 30s and early 40s. Some of the boats were taken during World War II and used for patrol boats by the Navy in Norfolk. And after that happened, they shifted around to the other companies. Smith bought a lot of them when they were turned loose again, and they never went back to the companies that owned them. Such boats as, Pocahontas, the E. Warren Edwards, the Wilbur Edwards, John Lawrence, A. Brooke Taylor, and several others, and I don't recall right now. They were bought by J. Howard Smith Incorporated, and they bought it.
I've heard a lot about boats being converted from minesweepers to Menhaden.
That was later years. That was in the 50s and 60s, yeah.
So you're saying that a lot of the original wooden steamers were taken to use as minesweepers?
No, they were patrol boats.
Patrol boats, okay.
They were used out of Norfolk to patrol for submarines and such.
Okay.
Because we had nothing during World War II at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And some of the men from the area went on those boats and were captains of them, whatever. The Wilbur Edwards was converted and had steel houses put on her and gun mounts on her bow and on top of her cabin.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just to do that particular thing. And after the war was over, the government turned them loose, and a lot of them were sold for $1 a piece to whoever wanted them. Mm-hmm. And the original companies that owned them didn't get them back. J. Howard Smith Incorporated bought most of them. Actually bought the plant, Marsh and Fisher plant, and also Edwards Company across the creek. They bought it out.
Was that Harvey Smith's family?
Harvey Smith's family, yes. And they took all of that over, and those boats were converted back to Menhaden boats. Most of them went to Promised Land or down east, Montauk Point, Greenport. Several of them fished out for several years. Some of them stayed on the bay when some of the companies were there. But the minesweepers didn't come in until in the 50s. They started getting those, which were Navy vessels built for minesweeping. And they made good fishing boats because they didn't have to do a lot to them to convert them. Mm-hmm. They used the same engines and equipment that was in the boats. They just cut out the middle of the hull and made a fish hole in it and adapted them to Menhaden fishing. And it worked out pretty good. Standard Products started to get into it. They did several in the beginning, and then Reedville Oil, which was the name of Zapata at the time, they bought several and converted them and started using them. Some of the names were, let's see, Reedville Oil had the Tarpon, R.L. Haney, Aleutian Mail. No, the Aleutian Mail, they bought that from Potter, and they changed the name of the boat to, what was the name of the bay? Ingram Bay. Mm-hmm. And they used them for several years, and then they started getting the AFB class of boat, which was steel hulls that the Air Force had during World War II, believe it or not, instead of the Navy. They used them for freight boats from island to island in the Pacific. They were a different class of boat than what we later had as PCEs, and they converted those. Some of them are still being used.
Is that the boat that you were helping convert? No,
I wasn't in that part of it. The ones I helped convert were Standard Products.
Okay.
I went to work with Standard Products.
Will you tell me what you told me before I turned on the tape recorder about the engines in that boat?
Which?
Well, the military boat had the engines apart.
They had separate engine rooms, and most of them were powered by Alcor diesels or Cooper Bessemer. Some had Ingersoll Rand. But
and where were the engine rooms? Way far apart from each other?
Not that far, no. One on the port side was ahead and the one on the starboard side was back, but you could go through to one engine room to the other.
And why did they design it that way?
Because of the war situation. The idea was PCE stood for Pursuit Craft Escort. Everybody thought they were minesweepers. The steel hull ones were not. The wooden hulls were, and they were specifically used, the wooden hulls, because magnetic mines. Mm-hmm. They could go in and see, the Germans had mines that had magnetic poles on them that would pull to a ship if it passed it and blow it up. And that's why the wooden hull boats were used primarily for minesweeping. But the PCEs, if you ever see in the old World War II films of Liberty ships at sea, you'll see these smaller boats going around and around them. They were faster than, of course, the Liberty ships and the submarines. They'd make about 18 knots. And they used them just to circle the convoys all the time. They had ash cans or depth charges on the stern of them to blow out for subs. They had, I believe it was a 4-inch gun mounted on the bow. They had 50 caliber machine guns mounted on the bridge, and then they had two 2-inch guns on the stern. Mm-hmm. And that's what they used them for. But the idea of the engine room was 4 and forward and 1 aft. If they got hit by a torpedo in the middle of the boat on either side, it would only hit one engine room. They had armor plating on the side of them. We took a lot of it off and we converted them. But we moved the engine room together so that it would be more feasible for us.
So that brings us to you and your involvement in the industry.
Yeah. Well, I started in the industry in 1951. That was before any of this happened. Mm-hmm. And I started out on Chesapeake Bay right after high school on a boat named the G.H. McNeil. We had a strike that year. You've heard about that?
I remember hearing about the strike.
Okay. We started out, got going, and after about a week or so, all of the crew members, the African-American crew, they all went on strike. They would not fish.
In 51?
52.
52.
52. I started out in the last part of 51 and went into the next spring in 52. And everybody tied up. Even the boats up north and went to New Jersey, the crews left them and they was tied up and what have you.
Oh, you mean this was coast-wide?
That's right.
All the way down?
Amalgamated Meat Cutters Union took over the crews. They all signed up for it, and they negotiated with the companies. And what they wanted was an insurance policy. They wanted union pay, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Lewis, Delaware in 1952 on a boat named the Helen Euphane with Captain John Dyes out of Virginia, Whitestone, Virginia. But Captain J.P. Dyes and John Dyes, his brother, and the man from Reedville just recently died, Haney. He had one steel hull boat out of Delaware, and I was on a wooden hull boat, and J.P. Dyes had the Absecon. I got it written down somewhere what the name of the other boat was. The Rehoboth was the name of it. Mm-hmm. And we fished the season of 52 out. Had a good year. Mm-hmm. It was 12 boats at Lewis, Delaware. There was 12 at Port Monmouth, New Jersey. I think it was 10 or 12 down east. There was 5 boats at Crab Island.
What is down east?
Montauk Point.
Okay.
That's Smith outfit.
Uh-huh.
We called it Promised Land. Actually, it was at Greenport, Long Island. It's all gone now, but it was there for many years. Even back in the 20s, that was there. Anyway, the next year I went to Port Monmouth, New Jersey on a vessel named the Fishhawk, which was one of the 2 big wooden hulls they had up there with Captain Lynn Larry. And we were high boat that year on the entire coast with 45 million. Mm. And I was second engineer, 18 years old, I guess. And we had a tremendous season. Everybody did up in that area that year, but we were high boat. The next year, I was on the same boat with Captain Lynn Larry. And by the way, anybody that's in this business, any age on remembers him. He was unusual. He wore his hair, his whiskers, down to his belt buckle. His hair, he could stick it in his belt in the back.
Really?
And it was coal black, and he was 30-some years old. Huh. And we called him Wild Bill. And when he would load the boat, he had been fishing in the Gulf of Mexico for several years with Smith outfit. He had a pair of 45 pearl handle pistols. And some people around still remember this. He would strap that holster on and those 2 guns and sit up on the bridge, and as he was coming to the dock swinging in, he would shoot at the stacks, and of course everybody would take off. He was that type of fella. He liked attention. He liked to be King Bee. And I fished with him again in Southport many years later. But getting back to Port Monmouth, in 1954, we put an airplane, the only boat I know that ever had it, on top of the after house of the Fishhawk. Spotter plane with pontoons on it, Piper cut.
Uh-huh.
We picked it up by the rigging from the mast and set it overboard. Captain Lynn would get in it and fly it, and he would fly over his own boat and set the net.
He knew how to fly.
Oh, yeah. And the company had its own spotter planes, but They went on strike, the spotter planes did in 1954, because they were getting paid a basic weekly salary. Smith was furnishing the airplanes and the gasoline. And the captains were making extra good money for the times. Well, they were getting right at $1 per thousand. And that figured out if you caught 40 million, that was around a little over $40,000. Fish spotters was making a salary of about $150 a week. They weren't satisfied, of course, because they were really putting the fish on the boat in a sense. Mm-hmm. So they went on strike, had a meeting at the office. Bill Mathias was his head pilot. And Harvey Smith was there, and he told the pilots, he said, whatever the captains want to do, I'll do. So the captains had a meeting and said, they ain't worth it. Give them any more money. And Bill Mathias said, okay, you don't feel that way about it. I'm going to take the smallest boat we've got here, which was the Rockaway. Captain Wyler Lewis from here fished it, and he said, I'll make her high boat. You can't do that. Well, he did. The other spotters they had just couldn't see the fish like he could. And that boat would only carry 750,000 fish. He loaded it twice a day.
He was in an airplane, though?
Yeah.
Why did he agree to work?
Just to show what they could do, what the spotter could do.
Oh, that they made a difference.
And then after about half of the season, the captains, three of the captains, besides Captain Lynn, which had his own airplane, hired a spotter of their own. He was from Southport, and they paid him 40 cents a thousand, 45 cents a thousand, 15 cents a thousand off each boat out of their own money. They took up collection in the crew. And after about mid-season, he'd made all the money he wanted. He quit and went home. And then none of the company hired spotters who wanted to work for the captains that did that, see. Yeah. Anyway, finally worked out, and they got more money, and things began to turn around. But that was quite a go around. But we caught a lot of fish those years.
I've never heard of a captain getting in the airplane and setting on his own
Captain
fish.
Lynn Larry. I mean, you can ask about it.
Was he the only one?
The only one I've ever known of. Yes.
His name was Lynn or Ben?
Lynn.
Lynn.
Now his brother John.
Leon or Lyn?
Let's see, it was Leon. I believe is what he spelled it.
Leon.
But his brother John is still living.
I've met him.
John just wrote a book about this industry, and he's 94.
Did he?
Yeah, he's still around, unless he died this morning or last week. But they were two unique fellows. John owned his own boats eventually, the John O. and the Jane M. Uh-huh. Two minesweepers that he converted, and they fished out of Cape May, New Jersey, and also here for Beaufort Fishers in the fall of the year. And late years, John didn't go on the boat. He would hire another captain to fish them for him. He also owned a railway shipyard where he did his own work and some others. Lynn was quite a character. He drank a lot in the 50s, and he caroused a lot. He did just raising up the devil, so to speak, all the time, everywhere he went. And later years, he got religion and changed in the 70s, and he was an entirely different man. I worked with him again in 1970 in Southport. We had 3 boats and 2 crews, and that worked out real good.
And so when he got religion, did he cut his hair and his beard?
Oh, yeah. Well, his wife made him do that. Yeah. And he treated me fine, because I was just a kid when I was on there with him in 1954, 53, 54. But he was tough on his crew. The man that was chief engineer on the boat at the time, Walter Lee Flint, Snooky they called him, and I was second engineer with. He was the father of the lady I married later years. She and I grew up together right in the community. But he left Port Monmouth in 1954 and went to Cape May, New Jersey with his brother. And they had 2 boats out of there. They didn't get along, and Lynn quit that and built his own boat, well, a converted one, named the Smith Point. And he fished that out of Virginia and then here in the fall of the year, and later sold it to Standard Products.
How was he hard on his crew?
Well, you had to be in the crew to know it. Cussing, hollering at them, and if somebody wasn't doing this right, he put him ashore, and that night he got in. And he had a really, most of the time, a really good crew because they knew that they had to work. Because in those days, that was before the power block. In the early 50s, you pulled the net by hand. You raised the fish by hand. And then we got the Marco power block, which you may be familiar with. That came about in 1958. And then the hardening rig, as we call it, which we would pull the net to the masthead and raise the fish. And that's when they took 8 men off each boat. We had a crew of 24, and we were down to 16. And got all new purse boats. I'll never forget it, 1958. I was up at the boatyard in Virginia, in Reedville. And they brought 32 new aluminum purse boats with the Marco power block rig in them to the Smith boatyard all at one time. At the time, I understand that they cost about $30,000 a piece. That's a lot of money in 1958, but that's what we got. In the 50s, most everybody had wooden hull boats. We got a set of steel hull boats on one of the boats I was on in about 1955. But they were heavy, hard to handle. They were all steel. Because then they went to the aluminum boats, which was much lighter, and could do more with them. You didn't have the weight to pick up because the boats were awful heavy. But up until, I'm going to say, well, even after, in fact, I was here the fall of the year of 1956 on a boat named the Brigantine, and we had wooden hull purse boats. I stayed at Port Monmouth through 1955, and when you were engineer in the fleet, the company put you where they wanted you to go. I mean, you were hired by them, not by the captain. 1956, a new boat came out named the Texas. Also, the Louisiana came out the same year. And I was put on a new boat with a captain named Freddie Haney. You may have heard of him. And we went to Atlantic City that year. And this is the first beginning, the airplane pilots coming in to being used more. Most of the captains didn't want to use them. They'd tell them where the fish were, they'd dip the wing in the net, and the captain would make the circle, himself, and send the dry boat off. So what Freddie did, there was a new man came in, he was from New Hampshire. A lot of the men in this area remembers him, the name was Lem Johnson. He was a crop duster and had not done in the fish pond, but he got a job. So Freddie took him under his wing, so to speak, to tell him what to do. And they went to a war surplus store and bought 2 walkie-talkies, which was on military frequency. They put one in the airplane and one on the boat. And they could talk to each other, and Lem would fly right over the boat. Many mornings he'd be over there all day. Excuse me. And he would carry us to the fish that other people couldn't find.
So up until that point, there was no communication. The plane would just dip its wing.
Most of it. Well, you had a communication radio from boat to boat, but not actually through the airplane. And that's what started putting radios in purse boats, radios in airplanes, because we were high boat again that year with 47 million, and the next boat to us was about 4 million back. And he was a young captain. He was only like 28 years old. We beat everybody up there because every time you'd look, we were loaded going back to the plant. The boat would carry 1 million fish, and we'd have her loaded by 9 o'clock and going because of the airplane.
And where was he from?
Freddie Haney, Reedville.
Okay.
Yeah. Some people get confused. There was an older man named Fred Haney, was a fish boat captain at Port Monmouth. He was always high boat up there. He fished his boat 2 years and didn't go on it. In the 50s, he had a boat named the Roma Shoal, which was new. I think he had cancer. He got sick. He couldn't go on the boat, so he stayed home, but he got captain's pay, and another man fished his boat. He stayed high boat for those next 2 years until he died. The captain that hadn't been fishing it took it over, but he didn't get to be high boat anymore because of airplanes.
So Freddie was the one that started communicating with the pilot first?
Through a walkie-talkie.
And didn't John Lowry invent something?
John Lowry he put a elevator on the mast to go up and down the mast. Everybody else had to walk it. I got a picture of him somewhere in one of these books. Let's see if I got it. And he did that, and several other things that he tried. But what really helped the industry was the Marco Power Block and the Umphress Railway or Umphress Power Purser, which took the men off of the boat. But actually, that was one of the old bay steamers that was left on you may have seen the thing. They did away with it some years later. That was the East Hampton. But I think there's a picture in here of John and his elevator situation. I'm sure it was in here. Yeah, there it is. That's his on the John O, and this is you see on the side there. He had, see that right there? He'd step in it and it was run by an electric motor, and he would come on down the mast.
Did other captains get that afterwards?
They put him on all the boats eventually.
Because I saw a video of somebody going right up.
But until that, you had to climb the masthead. Most of the mast was 70 feet tall and better.
Yeah.
And even then, only the captain rode in it. The mate and the pilot, and mate and dry boatsman had to go up and down it. And go. Now that boat I was on. Do you remember where you were when Kennedy was shot?
Well, I was 2.
Oh my. Okay.
I was somewhere up.
I was pilot on that boat the night that picture was taken, and that was the same day that Kennedy was shot.
How about that?
1962.
Oh my
63.
God. 63.
Right.
Pilot on this vessel.
We were coming from Hatteras down, and the boat offshore was a Pauline, which was Beaufort Fishers. This boat here was a Southampton, one of Smith's boats.
How about that?
That's a picture of I believe that's a Cape May plant in New Jersey.
So when you said that all the boats lost 8 crew because of the power block, what did those crewmen do? Do you remember what that was like?
Yeah, I do. It was quite a time. When we left Reedville that year, the Smith Boat Yard, that was over 200 men standing on the dock. And some of them were even crying.
Oh.
It was a terrible time because they had no job.
How did the captains decide who would go?
Took the best that they could get. We carried on. I was on the Princess Bay at that time. Captain Berkeley Simpson from here. Princess Bay was the largest wooden hull boat that they had at Port Mount at the time. The Fishhawk was the next one. But when we left the dock, there was men standing everywhere, and their wives, their families, and whatever. And we carried 4 extra men. Captain Berkeley said, this is so bad. He told 4 of them that they could go. He said, no. After a week or so, he said, I can't keep you. So he just more or less weeded out the better ones, and they took the better ones. And a lot of them just didn't have a job anywhere. For a couple of years, they just kind of filtered out, Yeah. It was tough.
Oh.
It was tough.
See, there was some 200 men standing on the dock?
It was about that many. Well, it was 8. We had, when we left to go north that year, there was 12 boats going to New Jersey, Fort Monmouth, 12 going to down east. That's 24. 12 or 14 going to Lewis, Delaware.
Oh my gosh.
And, well, just run that through your mind. How many boats are we talking about? 36?
Yeah.
Something like that. And also, at Atlantic City, there was 6 boats going there. And then 4 boats going to Cape May.
So it's a lot more than
It's
200.
talking about 45, 50 boats, 8 men all.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh.
Probably close to 300 men.
Yeah.
To figure it out.
Yeah.
That had no job. it was a tough time in Northumberland and Lancaster County. It really was for the men.
At that point, had they had any, were there factories on the Gulf?
Oh, yeah.
Did any of the men go down there?
Some of them did, got jobs down there and other places. Some of them got, after, we weeded out some, not particularly on our boat, because the boat that I was on had a crew from here.
Really?
Yeah, most of them were from North River, Merriman, Harlow.
Who was your captain?
Berkeley Simpson.
Oh, well, that makes sense, because he was from here.
Yeah, right. I was with him 12 years.
Some of those guys are still around.
Oh, yeah. There's one particular character in town, and you'll see him once in a while. And good friend of mine, because we worked together all those years. He's part Indian, Granville Tree-Eye. He rides a bicycle. We call him Red because he's red. Mm-hmm. And he was quite a character. But he worked with Captain Berkeley all the years that he fished. And as far as I know, he's still living. Mm-hmm. There was another man from here that worked with us many years, was cook for us for 7 years, Howard Wilson. He recently died, but he left us, I'm going to say in the early 60s, and went on to Eastwood, the research boat. And he didn't go back to the Menhaden fishing. He retired off it, which was good. And he was a good man. But all of our crew, Frank Merle, all the Merle boys from Merriman, and Ernest Davis was even on that boat for a while. Because he was one of the younger ones, but there was a lot of them from right in this area. And Captain Joe Butcher, my father-in-law, all of his crew was from here. And Wiley Lewis. Now, Captain Joe and Wiley did have some out of Virginia. Some men from up there that went with them, but most of them were from here.
Yeah.
And they were the 3 captains that went from here to Port Mama. Because in the early days, they had other men from here that went there and were captain up there.
Could you tell me what year Standard Products decided to build a factory in Beaufort?
They didn't build the plant. Oh. They bought that plant.
Okay.
Yeah. They bought that plant out in 1955.
And do you remember what it was before?
Yeah, it was a fish plant.
But do you remember what it was called?
No, I do not. And I've been told there are somebody here could tell you.
Yeah.
Johnny Simpson probably could tell you, and
Steve
some of the
Goodwin.
other. It was a doctor, seemed like to me, and him and his family that owned it.
Huh.
Yeah. But Standard brought it in 1955. There's a picture somewhere of the old plant, or what it would look like when it was first bought. And the one at Southport, that's a picture of the one at Southport back in the 20s.
Look at that.
That I worked and managed later years. But there's a picture somewhere of the Beaufort plant, one of these little deals somewhere. Maybe in this one. Anyway, they bought it in 1955. They bought the Moorhead plant, which was Taylor plant. They bought that in 1965. There's one that converted sleepers that Reedville Oil did.
And they look nice.
Yeah.
So, what year did you start managing Standard Products?
1980. I worked with them as show engineer from 1973 to 1980.
Right here in Beaufort.
Beaufort and Southport.
And did you gravitate south because your wife was from here?
I met her when she was 16 years old. I was 18. In Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. Her daddy was captain on the boat up there.
Captain Joe?
Yeah, her sister lives down the road, and 2 of her sisters are still living.
Captain Joe Buttrey.
Joe Buttrey. And she was 16, I was 18. And we went together 3 years and got married in 1956. Right after she got out of high school. She was 19, I think, yeah. Then, of course, that's when I started living here. I came here the first time. First time I ever saw Beaufort was 1953. Came in Beaufort Bar on a boat to fish here that fall. And then I came by road the rest of the time, and then on boats every year from then on until I got off of boats. We fished here in the fall year. I left it a couple of times and did other things and then came back. But anyway, Fort Monmouth was where I was from 53 through 1967. And, last year I was up there was with Captain Berkeley Simpson on the vessel named Louisiana. I was pilot with him. I didn't go back. We didn't do it. It was a very poor season. We were high boat with $7 million for the whole season. And the next year I went on head boats. You're familiar with a head boat? Yeah, Carolina Queen, Carolina Princess. I did that 2 years. But I went on fish boats, Menhaden boats in the fall of the year. 1968, I went on the steel-held boat named the Shinnecock, which is a big steel-held boat with Rudolph Haney out of Virginia, and fished here that fall. And that was the fall that Fenwick Island sunk. I was out there when that happened. That was a terrible night. I don't want to ever see nothing like that again. She turned over and sank, and 7 men were lost and 7 men saved. You know, sevens has I'm not particularly superstitious, but sevens with boats has a unique significance sometimes in their name. For instance, Titanic, 7 letters. Well, this boat, Fenwick Island, didn't have 7 letters, but she was built and launched on May 7th, 1957.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. She sank on December the 7th, 1968 at 11 o'clock. Her number on top of her pilot house was 7, and 7 men were lost and 7 were saved.
How about that?
Yeah. I thought about it after it happened, and and it began to add it up. I said, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's not the only one. There's other vessels of other places that the number 7 has some significance to it. I went to Alaska 4 years ago now, and was with the Holland American Line. We flew up and then met the ship in Seward. And when I looked at the name, I said, I don't think I want to go. They said, why? I said, the darn thing's got 7 letters in its name.
Did you go?
Vendome was the name of the ship.
You went though, right?
Yeah, we went, yeah. went 1,800 miles on the thing from Seward, Alaska, back to Vancouver.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, getting back to the Menhaden industry, a lot of things went on that improved the industry in the 50s. For instance, go back to the Marco power block, the hydraulic lifts on deck to pick the purse boats up. In the 50s, you picked them up with a rope fall, and you had a cable winch on what we call a Huster engine, and that went to the masthead and came back, and you had a hook on the end of it, and you'd roll the rope into a cat's paw, as we called it, which had 2 eyes in the end of it, and hook it in that, and then it went through a series of blocks, and you pulled it all the way to the masthead. That lifted the front end of this boat. Okay. Then you backed it off, you caught that rope around the cleat, and you went to the back end, did the same thing until you pulled the boat up level.
You had a little motor to help, or not?
The engine in the engine room, which is a 4-cylinder Waukesha in most cases, it had a cable spool, steel cable, that went to the masthead through a block. It came back down the masthead to the deck. It had a hook on the end of it.
So you would use that to pull the purse boat?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
And you had to do it on both sides. And in rough weather, it was tricky because the boat, one boat was laying in the water, hadn't been picked up yet, and the other one was hanging like this. And if the sea was running high, it was hard to get them up quick enough to get out the way. Once you tipped them and got them level with the davits, you were fine. But you had to pick both sides up. It was slow. Yeah. Of course, it was only as fast as your crew could handle it. Well, in the 50s, see, we put hydraulic cylinders on deck with 7/8 steel cable, and we rigged it through the davits and hooks on the end. So when you run the purse boats alongside, the hydraulic motors turned by an engine in the engine room picked both boats level at the same time. And in just about 20, 30 seconds, you had both of them up if everything worked right and was clear.
So as engineer,
Yeah.
could you tell me what your job was?
Take care of all the equipment on the boat, run the main engine or engine. Some of them had twin screw. Most of the older boats were single screw, which meant one main engine, one propeller shaft, one propeller. And the wooden hull boats, most of them were that way. They had a variation of engines at Port Monmouth and Delaware. And the Delaware fleet, the steel hull boats, all had the same engine. 800 horsepower Enterprise were built in Oakland, California. They were 8-cylinder inline. You couldn't fit one of them in this room. That's how big they were. They weighed 30 tons. The flywheels on them were anywhere from 45 to 48 inches in diameter. The shaft was 10 to 12, and I think one boat even had a 15-inch shaft, this big around. Went through the stern of the boat, and you had a propeller, depending on the engine and the boat, it was anywhere from 68 inches in diameter to 74 inches in diameter, 3 or 4 blade, which 74 inches, that's, you know, way up there. I got some pictures of some of them.
Gosh.
Anyway, the main engines, the ones that I primarily ran for a number of years were Bush Selzer. It was a German-made diesel. The Selzer Diesel Corporation, and one of the designers came here before World War II. He got with Anheuser-Busch Corporation and built these engines as stationary engines for breweries. The War Department took them over in 1939 or 40, and they took that engine and converted it to a marine engine for marine use in the Navy. There were 2 tugboats here that had them. They were Navy tugs. But Smith bought those engines after the war was over. He bought 4 of them and put them in 4 different boats. I was on 2 different ones, the H.R. Humphreys and the Princess Babe. And they both had the same engine, Bush Selzer, rated at 600 horsepower, 650 horsepower. And some people say, well, big engine. I said, yeah, it was. I could stand on the floor in the engine room with this particular engine, either one of these boats, and I could reach up like that, and I could reach half of her.
Gosh.
And they had doors on the side that you took off, and they were hand lubricated. Every 4 hours, you had to take a grease gun. The push rods were 8 foot long, and when they go up and down like that, they had a roller on the cam, and you'd have to take a grease gun and grease them every 4 hours. But they only turned 400 revolutions a minute. So the push rod would be doing like this, and of course you could do it while she was running. Primarily, you tried to do it when it wasn't running. If you got a chance while you were, the net, they were on fishing, and you'd stop the engine. They were direct reversible. They had no clutch. When you stopped the engine and wanted to back up, you had a wheel or hand throttle, whichever way the engine was rigged. You rolled the wheel, and when you did, the push rods would kick away from the camshaft. The camshaft would turn 180 degrees, would fall back in, and then the engine ran backwards.
And did you do that, or the captain?
No, the engineer did that.
So the captain had to tell you.
Well, you had a bell system in the early days. Later, the engines, when we got into the steel hull boats that had twin screw and all of that, then they began to put pilot house controls on. But they were clutch type engines like Caterpillar, Fairbanks Moss, and Detroit's. But they had clutches, and actually the engine ran all the time, and it's about like putting your car in and out of gear. They had a clutch on the back.
Right.
But the old ones were direct reversible. You had a bell system, and it was on the wall. You had 2 hammers with a big bell in the middle. And when the captain pulled, or the wire system went all the way to the pilot house, when you pulled the handle and he rang 1 bell, that means you start ahead at a 3rd speed. And then if he rang you a bell and a jingle, then you speed it up to half speed. When they had one little jingle bell. I got one of them on the wall out there, and you'd shake it. When you heard that, that meant go full power. And of course, when you were out running, 1 bell slowed you down to half speed. 2 bells stopped you. And then you got 2 more bells to back up.
How would you get all that straight?
You just had to remember it. When you got used to it, it was just natural as walking. I mean, you didn't, and everybody did it. I mean, all the boats had that system for many, many years. Later, now the minesweepers, when they converted them, they already had what we call the annunciator system. They had a post mounted in the pilot house, and you've probably seen them in movies or whatever. It had a dial on it, and you had two handles. And when you pulled it this way, this was for reverse, and it also indicated how much reverse you wanted, like a third speed, half speed, or full speed.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing when you came back to the top, that meant stop. And then when you went the other way, it was forward speed. And a lot of the sweepers had that system when the Navy had them. And of course, when we converted them, we still used it. And then you had a system in the engine room that did the same thing, but the engineer would have to still control the engine from back out. And then later they did away with that and made it an air system that worked from the pilot house to the engine room. And it was controlled with two handles up on the in the pilot house by the steering wheel. And the captain handled them and did what he wanted with them. But as an engineer, in the early days, you had to answer all the bells. You had to be there to stop and start the engine anywhere you went, day and night.
So you're always down in that engine room.
Well, a lot of the first of it was, yes, you were down below with the engine. Later we rigged them so that they had wheels. we rigged them up so that we had what we call upgrading controls, which means we could stay in the upper part of the engine room and control the engine.
Yeah.
But that's what you did, and you not only did you do that, you or the second engineer, you had to maintain the equipment, such as putting oil in the engine. These old big engines, they carried no oil in the engine. It was in tanks. It was pumped through the engine and pumped back through a filtration system, what we call dry base engine. There was no lubricating oil in the crankcase of the engine at all. It was pressure through the engine, dropped into a sump, was pumped back through a bank of filters to the tank, then picked up and brought back again and continuously.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and on the front of the Bush-Saldos and Atlas engines, you had a box about this big that held about 2 quarts of oil. And every 2 hours or so, you'd have to go pour oil in that because that little box pumped oil to the pistons in the engine. The crankcase was lubricated from 2 pumps on the engine. But the pistons got no oil if you didn't put oil in that little box. And they had 2 little lubricator pumps, and they had lines that went up and squirted oil through each side through the piston. The pistons in these engines, most of them in diameter were anywhere from 12 to 15 inches in diameter. When you pull the piston out of one of these big engines, and the connecting rod usually came with it, you could go back in that same hole and stand in it. That's how big around it was. They were, well, there's a lot of engines a lot bigger, but they were pretty good size.
Was it really loud down there?
Believe it or not, the turbocharger that was on the engine is what kept the noise. The engine itself was not very noisy. We could talk around it, but later with the minesweepers and the converted boats, you didn't. You had to have ear protection because the Detroit's V16, 149 Detroit, V16 Caterpillar, you could stand here and be looking at that engine. That one over there could blow all to pieces, and you probably wouldn't hear it when something hit you. That's how much noise was down there.
Now, you were, steam engines were before your time.
From before my time. Now, I remember them very well, and my uncle was mate on a boat, BHP Hubbard was her name, and I went out with him one time when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. It had in it, and the others did too, what they called a Seymour McIntosh, triple expansion steam engine, open crankcase. The top of the engine was way up here with the pistons and rods going like this, and the rods were open to the crankshaft. And they turned a big flywheel, and that's where she ran. And that also was hand lubricated. The engineer had to take a big squirt can and squirt oil in the bearings and such as she was running. Now, they were coal-fired. Most of the boats had 2, some of them had 3 boilers. And the boilers, of course, produced the steam.
Right.
And they would bunker 200 tons or more coal, and they had to have people that shovel coal to these boilers, firemen they call them, and keep the boilers up to steam pressure, usually around 180 or 200 pound steam pressure. And of course, that's what, when it was fed to the steam engine, that was what made it run and made the power for it.
So back in the day, you had 1 or 2 firemen as crew positions.
Firemen in the engine room, you had at least 2 firemen. You usually had an oiler, and a second engineer, and a chief engineer. You usually had 5 people in those old boats of this type.
Mm-hmm. And about what year did they switch out from steam to diesel?
Most of it went away in the late 30s, early 40s on the Chesapeake Bay, yeah. But up until that time, pretty much everybody, all the boats had steam. Even the factories ran off steam. They didn't have electric power. Well, some of them had electric generators later that ran by a steam engine. But most everything that was done in the plant was done with a steam engine. Later, they went electric motors and such.
So they had to freight in a lot of coal to these fish factories.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Well, these old boats that would come up the Chesapeake Bay when I was a kid, they would always race for the factory. And that went on even in my time, because if 3 or 4 boats were going to the same plant, the one that got that first, got his fish out first, got through first, headed back, or tied up first. Everybody could go home if it was on a weekend. So always on a Saturday, they always fished on Saturdays, and Saturday afternoon you could go down at the end of the point in Fairport or Fleeting, and you wouldn't see the boat, you'd just see smoke for a half hour or so, just boiling in the sky. And then you'd begin to see the mast, and then you'd begin to see the boat. But they were racing, and they had a full head of steam, and whoever could stand it and had nerve enough to tie the safety valve down usually got to the factory first.
The safety valve?
On the boilers. That was a critical point, because if you overdid it, she'd blow off or blow the boiler up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, they got up a heavy head of steam. More steam they had, the faster the engine would turn. And many a time when they turned Fleet's Point buoy out there, they'd be side by side, and they'd come on to the dock. Well, usually the cutoff was right at the beacon at the end of Fairport, Cockles Creek, and that was it. If you got there first, then everybody would back off. And then they had so much steam built up, they had to get rid of it. And way late Saturday night, you'd hear it roaring, they'd be blowing it off to get rid of it, because they didn't need it no more, and it was dangerous. They had to blow it off.
So they'd be to the dock blowing off that steam.
They'd just blow it out the side of the boat up or by the stack. Yeah, and it would be just a steady vapor. Of course, when they got ready to go again, they had to start all over again, build up steam again to go. But once it built up, and then a certain excess of it, they needed to get rid of it. They couldn't handle it.
Did you ever experience, I guess you must have experienced total engine breakdowns?
Yeah. Only once. And that wasn't the engine, that we were dead in the water. I was on a HR Umphress with Captain Johnny Robinson. And I wasn't but 22 years old. And they gave me a chief engineer job that year, and at that age, to go on that particular boat. And when I went aboard, when you run the engine up to full speed, the whole boat would shake. The mast would be shaking, everything on her. And I said, this is crazy. Why is she shaking so bad? So the engineer that had been on it the year before, Howard Hall, his son's still around up there, I asked him when we got to the dock, I said, Howard, did that thing shake like it all? He said, oh, yeah. And this was a joke that he told. He said, I went to Tom McCann last week in Red Bank, bought me a brand new pair of shoes Friday night. Wore them one time and set them back in the floor. And he said, when I went to get them Monday evening, said it had holes in the shoes from shuffling on the floor. I said, Howard, that's a lie, you know. But she just shook all the time. And you couldn't find a special place that she didn't shake. Now, half speed she didn't, but full speed she just kept, had a motion to her. And we went like that for about a month and a half. Well, I couldn't figure out what it was. The engine ran fine. Well, I finally found out We came alongside the net one day and she didn't back up. I reversed the engine, but she didn't back up. It was a tail shaft, propeller shaft. It broke. It was already half in two, evidently, and she was wobbling it like that. We spent a month at the shipyard getting one made. That's the only breakdown dead in the water that I ever had.
But you were already to the dock when you discovered that?
No. We were out off Asbury Park and coming alongside of a net to bail a set of fish.
Oh.
And she wouldn't back up. We'd like to run over the purse boats and all because we had no power. The engine was running, but it couldn't do nothing because the propeller shaft had broke. And we got towed. Captain Wiley Lewis towed us to Perth Amboy. We stayed there a month because they didn't have a spare shaft. They had to make it out of a square piece of steel and cut it in a lathe to make it round. It was 10 inches. And then the shake went away. We didn't have it no more.
But she was better than new.
Yeah, we didn't know it. I mean, they didn't know that's what it was. But then they found out, hey, we better look at something. So then they started pulling all the propeller shafts every couple of years, see if they had cracks in them. And a lot of them did, but they were brass. So they began to making them out of Manel. And then we got away from breaking shafts. See, wooden hull boats, when you load them, put a tremendous amount of weight in the middle of them, something gives. They bend somewhere. Especially those doggone minesweepers. I've seen them. They would look like the back end and front end were going to meet each other. I was on a John M. Moorhead at Southport. The engines in the engine room were 12 V71s, had 4 of them, 2 on either side. You could walk around the front of them, Barbara, and just go around them in the engine room. When you loaded them, there was no space. The engine would move forward and almost hit the bulkhead.
Oh my God.
That's how much they bent, because they were not built for fish boats. And the timbers just would actually buckle. And a lot of them did that. Now, the older wooden hulls, you didn't have few. They bent some too, but not as bad as the minesweepers. That was the only problem with the minesweeper. When you loaded one of them, they were going to buckle. But anyway, the engineer had to look after everything on the boat, mechanical-wise, engine-wise, and you're supposed to have known how to fix it all if it broke down, including the radio if that went out. That was your job. Later years, that changed. When I was at Southport, the Standard Products, when I was shore engineer, we had a crew that did all the work for them. The engineer didn't do anything like that. And we had radar and radio people that came aboard and fixed all of that. So primarily the engineer in late years just rode around and he watched the gauge board and see what was going on, or put oil in the engine if need be.
How about the purse boat engines?
Purse boat engines, pretty much the same thing. They wouldn't fix them, they'd bring them to the dock. But when I started out, you had to know how that thing worked and how to fix it. Of course, sometimes the purse boat engine would go bad and you'd have to change it at the dock, put a new one in overnight. But primarily, that's what the engineer did. And of course, you ran watches. If you were fishing, the engineers, both of them had to be up and running the equipment while you were bailing fish. When you left the fishing ground, say for instance from Hatteras here, which was 8 hours most of the time, then once you got the boats up and got cleared up, one of you went to bed, try to get some rest, and within 6 hours you'd call it whoever went to bed out, and then you'd try to get rest. Sometimes that didn't work, because you were up all day and all night. But and when you get to the dock here in West Beaufort at Smith's plant or Standard, one engineer would usually go home. You worked it so one of you could get some relief, unless you were broke down, and you'd stay off until time to go again. But you worked together and spaced out the time if possible so you can get some rest. Like I say, sometimes you didn't get that because something was happening and you had to be there.
Well, could you tell me what it was like in Beaufort when all the boats from Virginia would come down in the fall of the year?
Let's see, I started here in 53 and I did it up through 1970, I guess it was. Yeah, 1970 was the last year I did it here on a boat. Well, the Smith fleet in my time, usually tied up on Front Street. Starting out at Harold Simpson's dock, down on that end where Barbara Marine was and now is a restaurant and so forth. Sometimes there'd be 15 or 20 boats tied up there. Then the next group of them would be at the Willis dock, or the Gulf dock.
What did you call it?
Willis is.
Oh, the Willis.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's where Finn's restaurant is now.
Oh, okay.
And then later, Harold Simpson built a dock, and it's still there, over by Beaufort Bridge. And some of the local captains, like Captain Joe Buttry and Captain Wally Lewis and Captain Berkeley and a couple of other fellows from up, George Jones, which was a black captain, would tie up over there. And then the standard boats, when I first came down here, Standard only had 3 boats, and they tied up at the post office dock, which is no longer there. It was directly across the road. You've ever seen any pictures or know anything about that?
Yes.
Okay. They would tie up there. The boats from Mississippi, Louisiana area would usually tie up at the Exxon dock, Esso dock it was, and that was Willis's Esso, or Potter's dock. So there was 4 tie-ups along Front Street. T.T. Tom Potter's dock was the farthest one that way. Then the Esso dock was the next one, and then Willis's dock was, and then Harold Simpson. Okay. And one year, I think it was 1959, had 72 boats here in the harbor. Then later, with the minesweeper fleet from Virginia, with Zapata, or Haney first, and then it was bought out by Zapata. They tied up along the Moorhead waterfront over that at the Gulf dock over there and several other places. And when you came in, because you had all these purse boats, they were put in the water behind the steamers and tied out, and sometimes there'd be so many of them that you could actually step on the purse boats and almost get across the creek to Card Island. On the other side, there'd be so many of them. Huh. And most of them had to have maintenance, welding done or whatever every night. Something was broke up on them. The crew out of Barbara Marine did most of it. There, Jimmy Davis and Steve Beecham, Inky, he just died here not long ago, were the primary welders, and they did most of the welding, and especially after we had steel hull and aluminum boats. They were always broken open, something wrong. Then, of course, you had the grocery people. They were bringing groceries all night long in trucks to put groceries on the boat. And then the people who worked at the fuel docks, they were dragging hoses across each boat to fill them up with diesel fuel. And most people that did that type of thing, they worked all night to get it done, because each boat had to have a full load of groceries before they left the dock. And all of the stores that were on Front Street in Beaufort, all of them did it. And it took a lot to keep the whole outfit going. Then the men got off, and you stop and think about it, back before the power block deal, 24, 25 men. Some of the Mississippi boats even had as many as 28 men on them back in the early days. I'll just say 50 boats, 25 men to a boat. See how many men you got.
Whew,
and they all came ashore when all the boats were tied up. And
more than 1,000 men.
Yeah, that's right. And they were on the street somewhere. And most of them would get off at least once when they got in. They didn't stay aboard the boat. They had to get off the boat. And they went to the stores and all up and down, everywhere they could go. And Beaufort depended on it in those days for that time of the year for their livelihood, because you didn't have tourism like you got now. Nobody wanted to come to Beaufort in those days.
Yeah.
Mostly because of fish factories.
Right.
I remember we had a pastor that came here to take over the church, which was down on Broad Street then. And he's still around. He's in Newbern now, Mr. Wiggs. He came down here for a trial sermon, and all the factories were running. This was in the 60s. And he did take the church, and he came and told us many years later, he said, I don't know why I came down there and took that. He said, that was the stinkingest place I ever smelled in all my life. Because he was from up the inland, so he'd never experienced nothing like that.
Right.
And it was. You had Beaufort Fishers running, Standard running down Lennoxville, and you had Smith plant running in West Beaufort. And even before that, the Quinn plant, which Smith bought out, which part of the old chimneys are still there. And then you had two factories in Moorhead, the Wallace plant and the Taylor plant right across from the hospital. So there was what, 2, 4, 6 factories. And they created a lot of smoke and odor in the fall of the year.
What did it smell like?
Well, it smelled like money to us. You've experienced it. You know what it was. It was a lot of odor.
Yeah.
And especially if we had a warm fall. A lot of times here it wouldn't get cold till Christmas or after Christmas. From Thanksgiving till about the 15th to 18th of December, the weather stayed really moderately warm. Well, you'd load these boats with fish, and back in the early days, they had no refrigeration. The fish rotted. Many times we'd lay over that West Beaufort at that plant for 2 or 3 days with fish we'd caught on Wednesday and wouldn't get them out until Saturday. Well, they had literally rotted. And of course, when you cooked rotten fish, you had a rotten odor.
And you couldn't unload until 3 days later because there were so many boats ahead of you?
Part of that, and because the factory couldn't handle them. You see, if you started out, you'd have started here around the 12th, 15th of November. And we're catching, those days we caught all those big fish. They were like that. They were 20, 22 inches. Mammy shad, we call them. And had roe in them also, and a lot of oil. And after the first 8 or 10 or 12 boats came in and put fish off at that factory was loaded. Held 4 million in the raw box. But most of the boats we had here would carry close to 1 million each. So after you got 5 boats out, we say, the factory was choked until they cooked them down, and then they put some more in and some more and some more. But that was one reason why we always had competition coming from Hatteras here in the fall of the year. You would try to load the boat, but you try to make it so that you could get away and get ahead of some of the fleet. Because you knew that if you were 5th or 6th back, you weren't going to get back for another 2 or 3 days. Because the factory couldn't handle them all. And that was the same with every factory. They just couldn't take care of you.
And then those men that slept on the boat from Virginia would have to sleep on that boat with those rotten, stinking fish after 4 or 5 days.
Absolutely. And especially in what we call the forepeak, where the crew slept, which was forward of the boat.
Up here?
Yeah. Under the galley, down in the hull. Wooden hull boats particularly, the blood and the odor from the fish would seep through the wood into under the deck of the boat, and you got this ammonia rising. And of course, over the years, some men died from it. It killed them because you can't breathe it. In other words, it's just like breathing ammonia. These rotten fish will form an ammonia type thing, and I was at Southport when it happened. 2 men got killed in the fish hole because of that, and at New Jersey, the same thing. But you couldn't stay down there if it got like that.
Yeah.
And once you got the fish out, you'd have to take water hose, deck hose, we call it, and go down there and flush the bilge and everything to get the odor out because it was just too bad to stay there. Now, me being engineer on the boat most of the year, then some years up in the pilot house, on the back end of the boat, you didn't get it because it was all to the fish hole and forward. And that pilot house up the top, most of the time it didn't get to you up there because you had air flow, see, more or less. But in the forecastle, they call it, or the forepeak, it wasn't good. And that would give you a problem.
Did the fish ever explode? Like flash, whatever you call it?
No, they wouldn't do that. But what would happen, they would deteriorate and rot in the hole, and then it began to boil. Now, at Standard, when I worked with that company, we had 3 steel tanks that we put the fish in, and we used them as raw boxes. Beaufort Fishers and Fish Meal Company had wooden raw boxes, which were built in a V shape so that the fish would fall on a conveyor belt. We had 3 round tanks down at that plant, and they were steel, which was worse because it was just like putting in a pot on a stove with hot weather. And actually, you go up the ladder and look down, and all you'd see was soup doing like this.
Oh my gosh.
Bubbling and boiling. And because when they got like that, you had to process them, but you really didn't get the product out of them because they had deteriorated to the point that there wasn't a lot to get out of it.
Yeah.
You got the oil. The oil was skimmed off. You did all right with oil, but so far as making good fish meal, you really didn't.
So the refrigeration changed all that.
Refrigeration helped a lot when you could handle the refrigeration. In other words, we say one of our big boats, like the Atlantic Queen, Atlantic Beach, came into Standard down in Lennoxville and was loaded, and they'd carry $1.5 million to $1.8 million. But when they crossed Beaufort Bar, they pumped the cold water off. They kept them cold down to 32, 34 degrees. And they went immediately to the plant. And if everything worked right, you'd unload that boat, and those fish would be in great shape. But the next 2 or 3 boats that would come behind you, they would pump their water off and lay there sometimes for 8 or 10 hours. Well, the water being on top of the fish, when the weather got to them, the hot weather, it got worse than if you hadn't put anything on them. They would rot worse. And that, too, caused the product. So when you cook up Menhaden in a plant, the meal, you're supposed to get 60% protein. You have to guarantee that to the customer. And sometimes when you got rotten fish like that, it won't come out that way. It'll come out 56 or 58.
And then what do you do?
Well, what you do there, what we did, you save what we call stick water. I know you've heard of that. That's the water that you pump out of the boat's hole, that you wash the fish down. A lot of it is blood and guts. You push that off into a tank. And you'll get, with 4 to 5 million fish, you'll get about 60,000 gallons. When you put it in those tanks, it begins to ferment, of course, where you got the evaporator plant, stick water plant. You pull a vacuum on that water, pull it back, and you take all the moisture out of it that you can, and through this evaporator system, which is a suction type, you vacuum it down, and what solids is left in it, then you reprocess it through your dryers and bring it back and put it back on the meal as a solid, and you get your protein level back. You get approximately 70 tons of meal from 1 million fish, normal. Okay, you process that and you got it laid over in the warehouse. You process the water, you'll get anywhere from another 20 to 25 tons out of that same 1 million fish. Then you rewind it all together, you put it all back together. And you get the first 70 tons, which is fine, and you sell that, but if you can get the extra 22 tons and put on top, that's bonus. The only problem is, when you sell this to some of the feed companies upstate like we did, if they don't use it right away, they'll lose tonnage because that moisture will come back out of it and it'll shrink.
Did you warn them of that?
Well, once we sold it, we didn't really care where it went.
Just hope for the best.
That was their doing then.
So when you were the manager, managing Standard Products, you were the head honcho out there? Is that what that means?
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I'll give you a little story on how that happened. When I was shore engineer for Standard, after I came off of boats, went to Southport because they were having problems with their boats. A lot of the mechanical stuff didn't work, whatever. Pretty much got that straightened out. And I did that from 73 until 1980. A man by the name of J.T. Barnes was manager, had been for years now. Mr. Barnes began to get in bad health. Well, he had a little bit of a problem that caused that, and we won't go into that, but His son, by the way, was in charge of the aquarium. Jay Barnes.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew him when he was about that high. And we talk every once in a while, and I see him. Hadn't he retired from it now?
Yeah, I think he just retired.
Anyway, Mr. Barnes kind of got, so he wasn't up to speed, so to speak, according to the company.
Yeah.
So they retired him, and they hired a young fellow out of Virginia named Rick Hamrick, who was actually a politician. He knew just as much about fish factories as I do about the next spaceship they're going to fly. I mean, he had never been involved in many, but he had management skills, and he started out in early 1980.
At Southport.
At Southport. And I was down that shore engineer, which I was supposed to be taking care of the boat equipment at both plants when we came here and there. And after about 2 months, it was 80. We had all the boats from Virginia down there, and the boats that belonged to Southport, and we were cooking fish, I mean, day and night. It was a big year. We had another 400 million down there that year. So Joe Humphreys, who was Mr. Humphreys' nephew, he was general manager at the time. He flew in on his plane occasionally to see what was going on. And he met me coming up from the plant. He was going downhill. He said, "What's going on down there?" He always called everybody Hoss. "What's going on down the hill, Hoss?" I said, "I guess everything's all right, Joe." He said, "Yeah, it looks like everything's running." But he said, "Where in the hell is Rick?" I said, "I don't know. I don't keep up with him." He said, "Well, he's a manager. He's supposed to be here. They hired this guy to be manager." I said, "I know where he is. It doesn't matter too much to me. I got things to do." I went on. I went along before he caught up with me again. He said, "We got to go find him." I said, "Joe, I ain't got time. You go find him." He was on the golf course with some dignitaries, politicians, and all this. And Joe went over there and saw him. He didn't say anything to him. He just came on back. He said, "I'm going to put you in charge from now on." I said, "Charge of what?" He said, "This factory." I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm going to fire that sucker."
And what was your job before then?
Shore engineer.
Shore engineer.
Looking out for the boats and all their equipment and whatever. Of course, I helped them in the plant, and they had a breakdown or something. Anyway, I had a crew to work with me. So I came on, I got through with what I was supposed to do. My wife and I got in the car Sunday morning and came on home because the boats were done with and they were leaving to go south, going down to Georgia. And I would get out of there because I had been there day and night all week. I got here, and Joe came into Beaufort Airport on a plane. He said, "How about meeting me at the Showboat Motel?" I looked at my wife. I said, "I wonder what that rascal wants." She said, "I don't know. I hope it isn't nothing drastic." I just got home. I said, "Okay." So I got in the car and went to Showboat Motel. When I walked in the room, he said, "I just fired Rick Hamrick, and you're in charge of the factory." I said, "Come on, Joe." I said, "I got too much to do now to take it over." He said, "No, it's yours." And he said, "Look out for me, Hoss." I said, "Well, Joe, I already got a job." He said, "Now you got two."
Did you get a big raise?
Not that much, so. Anyway, I did. I took it over, and he fired Rick. Of course, Rick didn't have a job for about 2 years. He finally went to work ended up working with Waste Industries up here. Anyway, I don't know where he is now. He's a young fella. Him and his wife split up. I don't know what happened. I haven't heard of him in some time. Anyway, from 1980 until they closed in 1985, that's what I did.
Here?
But I never did here and there.
Here. Oh, you went back and forth?
Yeah, when we were running this plant, I was in charge of this one too. Had to be both places.
Well, when did Southport close?
Same time it did here.
What year was that?
Well, wait a minute. I'll back up. If you remember, we had a hurricane in 1984, and it was named Diane. It came up the coast all the way and came right straight offshore here. In the middle of the night, it turned around. It came back. I got some pictures of it in here. It destroyed the factories, destroyed everything. Did more damage in Southport than the hurricane in 1954 that was called Hazel.
Phew.
It tore the building down, the main factory building, tore up everything. More or less ruined it. Anyway, they didn't start it back up because it was going to cost too much to put it back in condition. So.
And what year was that?
That was 1984.
84.
And it was in the middle of the summer. that it hit August, I guess, September, maybe it was September. And the boats didn't go back down there anymore because there was nothing there to work with. And we finished up here and ran the fall of '84 and into fall of '84 and into '85, and then that fishing law came about restricting the coastline. You remember that?
Yeah, off Nag's Head.
Yeah, well, it closed it up 1 mile limit all up and down in certain areas of the coast.
Yeah.
And it meant that we couldn't start anywhere, either here or there, early in the season. Which at Southport, you always started in March, but the fish were coming up the beach.
No.
And so Mr. Humphreys said, "That's it. Forget about North Carolina. I'm out of there."
Was that Peck Humphreys?
Peck Humphreys. Mm-hmm. And he sold it to a company, another company out of Georgia formed up called Ampro, Ampro Fishers. But they had a Norwegian working with them. He came here and looked at it, and they were going to put the Beaufort plant back in shape. And he said, "I don't think so. I'm not going to put my money in it." I said, "Well, what the devil are you going to do?" He said, "I want to buy the property and develop it." Because that's what he did. He bought it from Ampro, and you see what happened. You know what's there now.
Those giant houses?
Huh?
Are you talking about here on Lennoxville Road?
Yeah, the plant, Southport plant. I mean, Beaufort.
Standard Products.
Standard Products plant. That's where all the houses.
Huge mansions now.
Yeah, he bought it and he developed it.
So he bought it from Ampro.
Right. Ampro bought it from Standard Products and was going to operate the plant. But in in February of 1985 was the last time either boat or Standard's tied up there. We cut the boats out. And on February 18th, 1985, and the last boat friend of mine in Virginia, fisher named Atlantic Mist, left the dock. I cleaned him out, washed the holes out and all, and he left the dock. And nobody ever came back again. That was the end of it. 18th day of February, 1985.
Is that the day you retired?
Oh, no. I went to work with Town of Moorhead and stayed over there 15 years. After that.
Oh, the state of
The town of Moorhead. I went to work after Standard closed. I was asked to go to Mississippi, and I went down and spent a week at the plant in Mississippi. But things were such bad shape. And my wife says, "You can go. I'm not going."
Yeah.
And because our grandkids were in school and whatever, she wanted to be with them. I said, "Well, I guess that's it. I won't take it." But they ran it 1 year after that, the plant in Moss Point, and they sold that to what is now Omega Protein. So I'm glad I didn't do it.
So the Standard Products plant, when it was running, was that only in the fall? Was that there only for the fall fishery?
Yeah.
Because Beaufort Fisheries had the sound fishery in the summer.
Sound boats, yeah. Standard never had them.
Okay.
Southport ran in the summer. But here, we didn't operate that plant, not while I was with it at all, until October, when we began to get it ready, and usually start in November and go through November, December, and sometimes up in January. Only the fall fishing here in Beaufort.
So how did that factory compare with Beaufort Fisheries as far as the machinery and all?
It was in good shape. Actually, we could handle more fish than Beaufort Fishers, because we had the big boats there in the fall of the year when we got involved with them. And you could handle 4 to 5 million a night, overnight. If they came in, say, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you could handle about that many. Another thing, too, Barbara is involved in fish factories, the fuel situation. Back when we shut down in '85, we had to convert from number 6 oil, bunker C we call it, the heavy oil, in boilers and dryers, which we were buying for like 35 to 40 cents a gallon. The environmental situation, they made us convert to cut down on the smoke from that to diesel fuel. Well, that doubled the price. The diesel fuel right then was running around $1 a gallon.
Before the diesel fuel, you were using what?
Number 6 oil, which is black oil. A heavy crude oil is another name. It's the oil that's not been refined.
Okay.
And a lot of power plants and all still use it today.
Yeah, but that makes a blacker smoke coming out of the stack.
Because we spent at Southport and here close to $2 million in scrubber equipment to clean up the smoke, odor, what have you.
Yeah.
We put in a scrubber at Lennoxville. What that was, the smoke from the stacks went into a big fiberglass box. At the bottom of that fiberglass box was a bed of acid, caustic, and chlorine. And the smoke went under that water and was pulled through and back up into a stack and come out the other end. Well, it turned the black smoke and the odor to white smoke and no odor. The only problem was, if you were within 100 feet of that white smoke and your car sat there, you wouldn't have no paint on it in a day or two.
Because of the caustic?
That's right.
That would pick up those chemicals.
But it passed the environmental.
So in a way, it was worse.
It was worse, but that was okay. It had white smoke.
Appearance.
Yeah, you could look through it.
That was the EPA? They did that?
They did that, absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, they still do the same thing with They still do the same thing with warehouses in Newman. But up there, it's big business. We went small time to the air pollution. And then again, they got into it with the water that went overboard from the factory. You couldn't do that no more. Which, the water that comes from fish is natural. It's blood and guts and any residue from fish. So, for instance, you got a place on the water, you got a dock back your house, where would you go to clean your fish? Down on that dock and clean the fish and throw it overboard, right?
Right.
Okay, what's going to happen to it? Other fish, crabs, whatever's going to eat it. So they got into that with us, and we had to process either that or haul it offshore and dump it 3 miles off the beach. And of course, in Virginia, they're having to do it now. At the end of the cycle of processing fish, they have to pump that water into one boat or several and take it in the middle of Chesapeake Bay. And right now, they're in contention about that.
I read about that.
Yeah, but what is wrong with it? Because it comes from fish. It doesn't come from a sewage plant.
It's organic.
That's right.
It's biodegradable.
I'll tell you what, I would rather go and get some water from the outlet from a fish plant than go in Calico Creek and get a cup full of that effluent that's coming out of that sewage plant. Because that comes out pretty and clear. But I work with Town of Moorhead, and I know what's in that. They've got chemicals galore in that over there that treats the sewage, and has to.
Yeah.
But would you want any oysters out of Calico Creek?
No.
And there's millions of them in there.
Yes, there are. Oh, my gracious. Well, so here we are today. The last fish factory is getting all torn down. Meal is at an all-time high.
And none in North Carolina.
And nothing in North Carolina.
No Menhaden boats, no factories, no nothing in North Carolina.
Yeah, so what do you make of that?
Well, they're all gone, all put out of business. Let me show you this. Let's sit right still. This is partly what put the Southport plant out of business in 1984. Not only that, but the hurricane. This boat, named the Atlantic Shore, one of our steel hulls, I was at Southport. We had 4 boats down there, and there was a lot of fish in Chesapeake Bay. Captain Henry Dixon was captain of this boat. He loaded her over in Tangier Sound. He came to the factory. They called for a hail on the boat. He said 2 million. Well, he got off 1,800,000. And he was on the radio the next morning early. I could hear him all the way to Southport. Said, I didn't get 2 million yesterday, but I'll get it today. Said I had more fish on her yesterday than she'd ever think about floating, but I'll do it today.
Oh my God.
Well, he did.
Uh-huh.
And that was all right, but when he turned in the creek, coming into Reedville,
Southport.
the engine room doors were open. The boat listed on its side.
Ah.
And the water came down the deck and went in the engine room and killed her before they could do anything. She laid there for 2 months, just like what you see.
Is that Reedville or Southport?
No, that was at Reedville, right
Really?
down the mouth of the creek.
But you said that's what shut the Southport plant down.
Because the pay company got mad and he took all the boats away from us. Get them to Reedville. She laid there 2 months like that. They had to get a crane barge to pick her up.
Why did he get mad at Southport? Because that's where the captain was from?
No. We weren't doing that much at that time. The fish came later, and he decided to just move them all up there to replace this boat because he was in competition with Zapata. And he'd lost one boat, so he took the ones we had down there and brought them. We lost the Atlantic Queen, Atlantic Beach, and the Atlantic Coast, and the Atlantic Mist. He took all 4 of them, carried them back to Virginia.
Now, which boat is this that...
That's Atlantic Shore.
Sure.
Yeah.
She just was too full of fish,
Yeah.
listed, got full of water.
If the engine room doors had been shut, it wouldn't happen. Or if she hadn't been overloaded, it wouldn't have happened. But when these boats are loaded, in the middle of them, get a good, well, the side of them, can't see it here, is down, water's actually on deck. Well, when you're running, the water will come down the deck, but will go out through what we call the scupper holes to the sides. But she rolled in shallow water a little bit, and the rail went underwater, and the water began to go in the engine room door, and nobody could get it shut in time. And it just flooded the engine room door, and she just continued to heel over on her side and flooded the engine room and killed her.
Killed the engine?
Yeah, and the boat too.
Were you able to pump the fish off?
They got some of them off, but they couldn't get the boat to float anymore until they got a crane barge out of Mississippi.
Oh my gosh.
It took 2 months to get her. Anyway, that's what more or less knocked her in the head, knocked us in the head because he took the boats away from us, and then on the back of the hurricane hit.
Oh yeah.
And
Just
that
one thing
finished,
after
that
the
finished it
other.
up. And everybody say, why are we so lucky? See, they sit low in the water. These are old pictures here, as you can see when they're loaded.
Yep.
And they don't have much what we call freeboard. You can start at the front there if you want. Now that's what the propellers look like.
Yeah.
That's
All right,
what.
well, before we go through the pictures, do you have anything you want to add to the interview?
Well, where do you want to go with it? What do you want? I guess I've been sort of jumping around from one place to another, not giving it a complete situation all the way through it. But if you want me to go a certain place or a certain thing you want to know about, that's where we converted them, what they look like before we converted some of them.
Okay.
And that's what the purse boats are. Those purse boats were 42 feet long, 10 feet wide. It was almost a ship in itself.
Jeez, that's huge.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll ask you, what do you think the future of the industry is? Because there still are factories and they're pretty modernized and the meal is high.
Omega Protein in Virginia right now is hanging on. I talked to my brother off and on during the week. He's right there. He's not involved in it, but he knows everybody that's in it. And the environmentalists, local people also, which have moved in, not the local people that have lived there, because most of them work in it or have, involved in it in some way. They're trying to get rid of it. They really are. Year before last, they blocked Cockrell Creek and wouldn't let the boats go to the dock. Greenpeace.
Oh my gosh.
Trying to get rid of it. And the governor of Maryland was involved in that. And he came all the way over here in a boat to lead the situation because he says the Menhaden industry is destroying the food fish industry in Chesapeake Bay.
Oh, the governor was leading that effort?
Yeah, and the governor of Virginia found it out and told him to get the hell out of his waters. But they tried to get a law passed last year in the legislature, in the Virginia legislature, to close all of Chesapeake Bay to all net fishing of any type, gill netting and all. It didn't work, but they got 16 votes, and they keep working on it. They'll get it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what about, then you get the factories on the Gulf, and it's an important product.
I think they're pretty safe yet because you got a lot of industry down in the oil business, paper mills and such. They kind of overshadow it so far as the odor's concerned and other stuff. So I think they'll be all right for a while. How long, I don't know. But Virginia, I don't know. It's iffy. It really is. But they've just built a new plant up there to handle this fish oil product to make omega fish pills, and oil.
Oh, yeah, the omega-3.
Yeah. Do you take them? No.
I have.
Why do you not take them? You don't like them?
No, I do. But you know what? You can now buy, I was just at the grocery store, you can buy milk with omega-3.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in everything now.
Right.
It's in cereal.
Yeah. I've been taking them several years. I do think they help to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Some people can't take them.
Where did they build the new plant, in Reedville?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, it's just particularly for that.
Yeah.
Away from the main fish factory.
See if they can get the pharmaceutical side of things on their side.
That's what they're pulling for. Because many years back, you probably have heard of it or maybe didn't know anything about it. Harvey Smith tried to get that situation going, not particularly the pill, but they were making what they call fish meal flour to make bread out of. And it was a lot of it done in Europe, but we never could get the
FDA
right here to pass it because of where it came from.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of it done. Because fish oil is used in lots and lots of products. Primarily back in the early days of Menhaden fishing, fish oil went in all your paint, big time. Rust-Oleum still uses it. That's why it's rust preventative.
Well, thinking about your whole career in the fishing industry, in the Menhaden industry, and all the different things you did, what was your, what did you like best about it?
Competition, probably, and making more money than you could anything around here. In the 50s, well, as far as that goes, here and in Virginia too, you could get a job, and I did in the winter months. I worked as a mechanic. I worked as an automotive mechanic. I worked as a machinist, automotive machinist. I worked as service manager for Parker Ford for 3 years. But I could get on a Menhaden boat and double it or triple it, and that's why. And also, in its heyday, I'd say back in the early days, it was competitive, and I was young then, and I liked that part of it because it seemed like the more you put into it, the harder you worked. If things went right.
Competing with other captains,
other boats. That's right, other boats. You was always under competition to beat the other boat here, or get a better fish catch than the other boat, or whatever.
Or how about factories, like when you're right down the road from Beaufort Fisheries, were y'all in sort of a friendly competition to see who could process things?
Well, when I was with Standard, I had gotten away from the Smith outfit, and actually, when I was working with Standard from 73 on, the plant at West Beaufort closed in 74, I think it was, the Smith factory. So the only competition we had was Beaufort Fishers. And they only had, unless they had some boats from Virginia, they only had 2 or 3 boats, So they really didn't bother us. We overcame any competition we had with them. So that really wasn't that much of a big deal. Now, in the summer months, we was far enough down the coast away from Beaufort Fishers, with Southport, that we didn't bother each other, so to speak. When Bobby Martin started fishing the Gregory Pool, and by the way, I got him started in that. excuse me.
How'd you get him started?
He was second engineer at Southport on the Atlantic Beach.
Uh-huh.
And a young fella. And the captain, Elwood Willis, was fishing the Gregory Pool. Our boats, I'll say, went to Hatteras from Southport, and there was a body of fish, I'll say, was right up in what we call Hatteras Bight. It was over top of a wreck, and Elwood wouldn't set on it because he had the only net he had.
Yeah.
And he called back to the plane, and the plane showed it to him. He said, he called Jewel Wheatley, said, I can't. If I set on it, I may destroy the only net I've got. Do you want me to do that? No, but I want the fish. He said, well, I can't catch them without a net. Oh, well, do what you want. Well, we came along, and the captain on our boat took a chance and went there and set on them. And Bobby Martin had gone mate on this particular boat, and they caught up that place of fish and bailed $1 million out of it. Fortunately, when they sat on it, the current pulled them away from the wreck. And of course, when he came back here, Jewel got mad with Elwood after the man had been there like 25 years and fired him because he didn't catch that place of fish. So the boat was without a captain. And Jewel was trying to find somebody. And Bobo came to me, he said, you think there's any chance that I could get that boat? I said, Bobo, you'll have to ask. I don't know. He said, would you help me? I said, well, I'll tell him what I know about you. That's all I can do. So he came up here, and Jewel called me and talked to me 3 times. So what do you think? I said, well, he's young. He wants to make something out of himself. He may mess up everything you got, and he may not. Well, I don't know what to do. I said, well, it's your boat. So he hired him. And the first year he did. He had a lot of problems. Bobo did. He run aground a number of times. He tore up nets. He sunk burst boats. Finally, he got a good enough crew and a good mate, and he went on. Caught $100 million one year. Did great.
And at that time, were you managing the Standard Products plant here? Okay.
Yeah. That was
so he was working for on a Standard boat. Mate.
Bobo?
Yeah.
Started out down there. I got him a job as second engineer.
Yeah, so you were kind of helping him go to a different company.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was something he wanted. He was going to go anyway, I think, and try it, but that was all right.
Yeah.
But he came off of the Atlantic Beach. It was mate with Meredith Robbins, and came up here and took the boat, which was fine. And like I say, we helped him when he first got started. Our boats did, because the boy wasn't experienced, and he did the best he could. But he finally hired a mate. In fact, Ernest Davis went with him the second time, but the first mate he had was Bill Lewis. And they began to get a good crew, and of course, that's the key to the whole thing. I mean, I've seen boats catch a lot of fish when the captain wasn't even on the boat. I mean, you got to have a working crew. You got to have an organization. Well, once you get that, and they work with you and whatever, you'll do all right. And of course, when we left Southport, closed the plant down, he had the whole coast to himself. He had a factory and a boat and 2 airplanes. And whatever fish was here, all he had to do was go find them and catch them and bring them back. Nobody competed with him except in the fall of the year. And he had a good setup. That's why I don't envy him of that. I talked to him the other day, because he's not on a boat anymore.
Yeah.
And he's tore up. He wants a boat so bad he don't know what to do. He went to, there was one opened up in Virginia this fall. They fired the captain up there because of drug testing. And he said he was trying to get it, but then he told me later, said, I didn't get it. I said, what happened, Bobo? He said, well, they took one of the fellows was already up there and let him have the boat. He went in the Gulf several years ago and tried to take a boat down there, but that didn't work because the crew was messed up.
Yeah.
Drug situation, which now they have to pass drug tests and have to watch out for what such as that.
That's right.
But I guess the competition in it back there, I couldn't do it now, but I wouldn't want to go back in it, I don't think, like it is now. But that was the main thing, the money that was in it, competition. And some regrets I have about it because I stayed gone. When my family was young, especially when I was in New Jersey. I was gone 2 weeks at a time. Now, first along, in the 50s and early 60s, my wife and kids went up there with me and would stay, in which some of the families from here did. And they would stay, and we'd rent cottages up there along the beach. And at that time, you could get a cottage from, well, $350, $400, later $500. But then all of a sudden, the man that owned them sold them, and the price was $2,000 a summer. We couldn't afford it.
A summer?
Mm-hmm. Well, from 1st of June until August.
Oh, wow.
And it was just more than we could handle, so nobody went in after that. Because I stayed up there several more years after that. But at Southport, it was some better because I could get here, 132 miles. I could come home, if I got a break.
Yeah.
But when I went down there, the deal was with the Humphreys family that if I took the job, that they would take care of my expenses, whatever it was, and pay me a salary, which we agreed on, and a commission. And they did. There's no problem. And the Sea Captain Motel, you ever been to Southport, downtown?
Yes.
Sea Captain Motel?
I think I remember.
Anyway, I think it's still there. It was new then. I stayed in it 7 years. In an efficiency. It was nice.
Was the factory right there at the
no,
water
the
depth?
factory was up the river further.
Okay.
Are
there remnants of it still?
Yeah, well, not much, because they, just like they did Lennoxville, they've cleaned it all off, and there's condos and everything else on it.
Yeah.
But it was right by the bridge. There was 2 factories there. Southport Fishers and Brunswick Navigation. Brunswick Navigation was one Standard brought out and operated. Brunswick Navigation goes back to 1930. That old picture that you got there, that's what it looked like back there then.
And Southport Fisheries?
Southport Fishers was the next one up. And they both operated. Several boats came from there that were bought out by Standard. And in fact, John Larry bought one of them to Elner M.
I'm just impressed by how regional this industry is and how everybody knows each other.
Yeah. Well, see, it stretched all the way from Maine to Florida and then across the Gulf Coast. See, there was a factory in Fernandina, Florida for many years. And that was by a man owned by a man by the name of W.A. Mace, which owned the Beaufort factory. And Smith bought that out. There was a boat by that name and several others. Do you remember the old boat that was on the shore over at Atlantic Beach?
No.
Yeah, they turned it into a bar room, pulled it up on the shore, and it was a bar room for years. That was a W.A. Mace.
Oh, really?
Belonged to plant in West Beaufort. And Smith bought that outfit out, of course, the West Beaufort plant, and ran that for years, just in the fall of the year. But Fernandina was one place. There was one in South Carolina on an island. I'm trying to think of the name of it. And then there was 3 plants at Southport at one time. And then, of course, the ones that were here. And then you went to Virginia. And in the early days, there was a plant at Jinkatig, Virginia. There was one later at Cape May, and then the ones in Reedville.
Yep.
They're all gone now but one. Every one of them.
Yep.
All shut down.
One on the entire Atlantic coast now, right?
That's the only one. And then, of course, you had 2 plants at Lewis, Delaware. Smith had one, and also a company by the name of Hayes had a plant there. And in 1952 through 54, I guess, there was 25 boats fished out of there. They're all gone.
Okay.
I guess I wore your tape out.
Yeah, we better quit it pretty soon. But, so, anything else you want to add before I turn it off?
I can't think of anything unless you got a question.
No, I think for now that's good. You've been a treasure trove. Thank you,
Well,
Mr. Edwards.
that's other stuff that I could get into, I guess. But
Sure.
Thank you again for joining us to The Landing. This podcast is brought to you by the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. I am your host, Stacy Davis Baisden, and today's podcast was produced by April Davidson. Tune in next week as we continue learning, sharing, and remembering together. If you'd like to hear more, check out our previous episodes where you get your podcasts. Until then, stay safe and be kind.